If you're putting in hours of piano practice, but you're not getting the results you hope for, this video is for you. You might be currently missing some key elements in your routine. Sure, we know to work on our pieces and throw in some scales, but what do we actually need to include in our sessions, and how much time do we dedicate to each? By the end of this video, we're going to answer all those questions so you'll know exactly what to do every day when you practice piano. Let's first talk about what makes a practice routine effective. I think there are three things. Number one, consistency. If you want to get better at any skill, consistency, especially for piano, daily consistency is going to be so important. And we've covered this in other videos before, but the reason a daily routine is very important is because piano playing, the building of coordination skills, the building of sight reading and theory and playing skills, everything to do with piano, all that takes a lot of sleep. Whenever you see a really awesome piano performance on YouTube or Apple Music or on Spotify, when you see someone play really well, that's actually the culmination of a lot of little gains made every day. So consistency is number one. Number two is goal settings. Okay, so from assessing my piano students, it's the students that really know what they need to do in terms of what they need to do today and what they need to do from a long-term perspective. Those students tend to progress a lot faster. Just to give you a quick idea, I was working on this one just 2 days ago. So me, myself, I wasn't really trained much in jazz, and I wanted to kind of get my hands dirty with playing some bossa nova, which is a branch of jazz. I took a long time just to get this. I could barely kind of coordinate this part. So a lot of my practice 2 days ago was just being extremely dedicated to just these two bars, having a very concrete goal. Okay, I want to learn how to coordinate this rhythm, and I want to get this one done in 20 to 30 minutes. So there was a lot of hand separate practice, which eventually led to hands together. So broadly speaking, this general idea of knowing what you're working towards in that practice session. Don't just play piano and practice piano because you have to play and practice piano. So just talking about this general idea of we want to practice piano and actually know what we're trying to achieve in that session, rather than just going, oh, I should practice piano today, so I'm just going to go and practice piano blindly. And number three is adaptability. Within piano practice, a big thing to kind of think about is definitely motivation. And sometimes you're going to focus well, sometimes you're going to focus less well. And I find that the good students who tend to progress faster, they have good adaptability. Okay, so they know that, okay, let's say today, I'm just not quite feeling this piece as well. So they know how to, let's say, practice something else. Practice, let's say, another piece, maybe focus a bit more on Hanon today, just to adapt and make sure you get that consistency, that daily practice, rather than just giving up. So remember, practice is not about just how much time you spend on the piano, it's about how you spend it too. Let's broadly talk about some key skills you need to include in each level. Okay, so roughly speaking, I'm just gonna roughly break it up into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So beginner is someone that's played for 1 to 2 years. Intermediate are roughly rated as, let's say, 3 to 5 years. And advanced is more than 5 years. So for beginners, you want to focus on things like learning how to read sheet music, playing short pieces, okay, pieces that are 1 to 2 pages, getting very comfortable with chords, let's say major and minor chords first, learning some simple scales, C major, G major. In intermediate stage, you need to add a few more things to that. So if you're in that year 3 to year 5 range, you need to add more technical work. Okay, so you need to do things like arpeggios. You need to perhaps start playing some etudes. Okay, etudes are basically pieces that are written to improve on a piano player's technique. And just generally speaking, you need to tackle harder and harder pieces. Okay, don't just stay in that kind of easy level. I feel like a lot of how much a piano person increases in the piano skill has got so much to do with how comfortable they are with being uncomfortable. It's all about mastering something, and then once you master something, try to find something new that is uncomfortable to master. And if you just kind of close your eyes and did that every day, you're gonna improve every day. For the advanced players, this is all about refining repertoire. This is all about not just kind of staying with those 3 to 5 pieces that you know. It's all about constantly expanding, constantly learning new scales, learning new pieces that exposes you to different techniques. Whatever piano level you're in, when you're practicing, I think you need to cover 3 fundamental things. You need to cover technique, you need to cover music theory, and you need to cover repertoire, which are your songs and pieces. Most of the time, people kind of nail the last one, okay, repertoire. So when people think about piano practice, they're often just kind of like, yeah, going straight to their piano pieces, which is not a bad idea. But in this video, I want to advocate for you to do also some other areas that I think are very fundamental to someone's progression and understanding of music. So let's talk about part one. Regardless of your level, you should be spending some time on your technique. What do you do for technique? Okay, so I have done videos, let's say like Schmitt. Simple kind of like coordination exercises like that. Another common one for people to do is Hanon. So these are like not really, piano songs or pieces. You don't really kind of perform this for anyone. These are exercises that are written primarily for someone to improve on their piano technique. So a part of your piano practice needs to be dedicated to technique, because without technique, we can't play anything. So think about things like warm-ups, think about things like scales, or exercises such as what I just played, Schmitt or Hanon. These belong in sort of the technique component of your piano practice. The next part of your piano practice, theory, okay? So theory, I often like to just mix this in with, let's say, your repertoire part. So repertoire is your pieces and your songs and you're practicing. So let's say you're working on a very famous piece like this one. Well, let's now look at the piece and see if we can analyze the chords in it. Some part of your practice time should be dedicated to things like understanding the key. Okay, so I know this piece is in C major, and understanding about like what chords are in this one. Okay, so we know that this first one is a C. This next one. Okay, this one is actually a D minor with a pedaled C. If I'm speaking sort of alien language here, don't worry. Take some time to kind of like research this. And then this one. This one's a G chord before it goes back to a C chord. So I think some part of your practice needs to be dedicated to this kind of stuff, this kind of analyzing of what's happening within the music. Because if you're simply just kind of following blindly and playing notes and not understanding what the system is, it often results in plateauing after about 1 or 2 years of playing, which I don't recommend. Try to understand the system of music so that you can go deeper and you can enjoy it even more. And then of course we get to the repertoire part of the practice. Okay, so when you're practicing piano, you're obviously working on your piano pieces. I've done many videos on how to practice, pieces, and just not to get too much into it in this video, but the main thing I want you to really focus on is to play correct notes. Rhythm kind of comes in a little bit later. For now, try to go so awkwardly slow that you're able to play everything correct. If you prioritize that, you'll learn the pieces much faster. I'm currently writing a PDF on how piano players can assess their own skills and what they need to do, a bit of a checklist of what they need to do to upgrade themselves to the next level. If you're interested in this, stay tuned for that. I will put that in the description and a pinned comment when all that is ready. It's a bit of a piano roadmap, especially for the self-taught learners out there. Stay tuned for that. Let's drill in now into daily versus weekly goals. As a piano player, you need to kind of be a really good project manager from different kind of time lengths. You need to have a good plan for, let's say, what you want to achieve in that week. And then you also need to be able to know if you want to achieve a page of music in that week, what you have to do daily to achieve that goal. So for example, today's goal might be to master a tricky left-hand passage in bars 21 to 22. And you really make sure that is done today so that tomorrow you can kind of focus on something else. So this is something I want you to think about. Do you have some concrete daily goals? What do you want to achieve today in piano? And then also, what do you want to achieve in your week? Try to think in those two lenses. Weekly and also daily. So if you are a beginner, your practice perhaps can look something like this. So we're talking something like a 25-minute piano practice routine. So we have 5 minutes first for some basic scales, C major, G major, some finger warm-ups, maybe some Schmitt, and then 15 minutes for your pieces, okay? And maybe some chord practice if you want to kind of do something that isn't your pieces. And then the last 5 minutes, you can do, some sight reading. Sight reading just means learning new music, or you can do some, let's say, analysis, some theory analysis of the pieces you're currently playing. As you advance in your level in piano, your practice time needs to extend. I've worked a lot with students that have gone from beginner to intermediate and advanced kind of levels, and they often tell me that they don't even realize how much time they're practicing as they increase in levels, just because of the amount of material, the amount of time each thing takes. But an intermediate routine might look something like this. Okay, so we have maybe 10 minutes of scales and arpeggios. At around this intermediate stage, I think someone should try to begin to think about mastering some of your 12 major and minor scales, plus the arpeggios, plus the chords. So 10 minutes of just building that skill, 10 minutes of exercises, maybe some Hanon, maybe some Czerny. If those are a little bit too dry for you, I recommend you to maybe look into some etudes. Okay, so etudes are piano pieces that sound like music pieces, but they're written specifically to improve the piano player's techniques. Etudes, go check them out. A good Google search term might be intermediate piano etudes, and see what that gives you. And then 25 minutes on repertoire. Okay, so your specific piece or your 2 or 3 pieces, and make sure always remember to play correct notes. Ignore rhythm for now. Play very slow, but play correctly. You'll learn a piece much faster that way than sort of blundering it through. An advanced routine looks something like this. Okay, so 15 minutes of exercises, 30 minutes of repertoire, and 15 minutes of sight reading or analyzing new pieces. So this roughly equates to about 1 hour of practice, which I think for some of the advanced players out there, and I see in the comments, this is like kind of a minimum for some of us. When I was really, trying to get good at piano, I was practicing somewhere between 1 to 2 hours per day. So obviously, if you're, let's say, practicing 2 hours, you can just 2x all of these time allocations for each section. A couple of other things before I wrap up in this video. I want to talk about the Pomodoro Technique. This one's also quite a good one. So this is where you have 25 minutes of focused practice and you take a 5 minutes break. And the 5 minutes breaks is a must. Okay, it's not an optional break. It's a very strict break that you must take. And the idea behind the Pomodoro Technique is it kind of forces you to be very focused in that 25 minutes because you know you must take a break for 5 minutes after 25 minutes. So try this one if you haven't already. Every piano player eventually will come into contact with burnout. So let's talk about it real quickly before we finish. To keep piano practice exciting and to avoid burnout, you must constantly, in my opinion, keep rotating things around. Rotate your exercises around, rotate your pieces around. Sometimes it's not always necessary to get a piece to like perfection. Not always necessary to get an exercise to perfection. Sometimes it's good enough, and maybe you need to discuss this with your piano teacher, or you have to decide that for yourself if you're self-taught. Sometimes it's okay to get to 55%, and then like just kind of take a break from it. Bookmark it, try something else, learn from that new exercise, and then come back to the old exercise next time, 2 months from now. And then you realize you'll have a sense of freshness around it. And then piano becomes less sort of like dry and sort of slow. So to avoid burnout, I want you to start to think and also be really good at knowing how to rotate around and creating some variety in your practice. This one is something a little bit hard to teach. I kind of got better at it over time. But please think about how to diversify your piano playing, diversify your piano practice, diversify what you do on the piano to make it interesting. Sometimes it's focusing on pieces. Sometimes it's focusing on, let's say, ear training. Sometimes focusing on theory. Sometimes it's focusing on other genres. Okay, let's say you play classical. Let's try playing a bit of pop or playing a bit of jazz. Introduce some new things to your ears and your brain. How do you practice piano? Let me know in the comments. I'm very interested to know how our subscribers and our viewers are actually practicing piano. When you share, you also help other fellow pianists around the world to learn from you too. Hope this has been helpful. Check out my other videos for more ideas on how to practice piano. I'll catch you in the next one.